Good morning. Look at us joining together on a Sunday morning in this beautiful virtual way. How grateful I am to be creating sanctuary in an obscure way, but in a way that we know we are joining together again. So, welcome to the West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Karen Rice, and it really is a privilege to be here this morning. Before I really get into sharing some exciting news with you and jumping into my exciting message this morning, I just would like to take a moment to consecrate this space, to just pause for a moment and let us join together in that one mind of that infinite intelligence, that which I call God, and know that right where we are is that wisdom, is that presence, is that great healing force of love. I know this time is blessed, and I'm so grateful for it. I let it be, and so it is. Well, I have a fabulous message prepared for you. It is in honor of Halloween because had we been on schedule and gathering together in the sanctuary, it would have been our Dress Up Sunday. And so I have a message entitled Horns and Halos, and I'm tickled to be bringing you a quasi-Halloween message where we can chat about spiritual law with a little bit of humor and some relevance. But my news is, if you haven't heard, we've made a decision to reopen the center on November the 15th. That will be shortly before Thanksgiving, but in that great month of being grateful, usually a time where we celebrate and have a family meeting in our stewardship program, Seeding Our Future, which we will be doing that. We decided that was a perfect time for us to reconsider joining together in an official way in the sanctuary. So we've been playing with the positioning of the chairs, the seating arrangements. We see that we can easily fit 30 people in here and honor all the safety distancing, and there are a lot of details that you can find in the newsletter this week. We'll be taking temperatures. We will be requiring mask wearing. And it'll be up to you to decide whether or not you're ready to come out. But we want you to know that we are indeed consecrating space, not only the space between us and our devices, but right here in the walls of this sanctuary where for so many years there's been a lot of prayer and a lot of worship and a lot of song and activity and celebration. So stay tuned for more information. We'll be doing that by reservation so that we can not exceed the number we want to have here, but I'm very excited, and I'm knowing that even if you plan to stay at home, I can sense that you'll share the joy of things getting a little bit more normalized in the West Valley, and especially here in our spiritual center. So let's talk about horns and halos, shall we? I found it always amazes me, but I actually found a quote that is fitting for the title of the message from Dr. Ernest Holmes in his fabulous book, A New Design for Living. And here's what Dr. Holmes said that stirred my creative energy. We need to develop bigger and better equivalents for our future. I mean, that set alone would be a great topic for a talk, especially in these times we're living in. We need to develop bigger and better equivalents for our future. Perhaps we need to remove our self-bestowed halo and let our minds partake of their greater source. So when Holmes suggests that it's time to remove our self-bestowed halos, he's not giving us permission to go out and be naughty in the world and not be responsible in our relationships and the way we treat each other. But what he's really saying here is there's a way we can align ourselves to that greater source so that we can develop bigger and better ideas and visions for our future, generally speaking. And so there's just something more, and that has been the theme of what I've been speaking about for weeks now. There's something more, and I want us to keep remembering that. I want to keep reminding us that. So I have decided to share with you a story. It's called my hamburger story. It's a true story based on an incident in my life that happened only a couple weeks ago. I had to take some time to be sure I was able to talk to you. I had to process all of the details of it to make sure I was really clear on what the message is here. Now, it's going to sound like it's related to COVID or pandemic. And what I want to tell you is I'm presenting a story to you that has to do with an experience I had in the grocery store around sort of some of the COVID stuff and in hamburger. And I realize that you will hear it in whatever capacity you're able to hear it. So what I'm going to do is really invite those of you with ears to really hear the bigger message. So if you start notice as I'm telling the story, it's going to trigger some stuff in you, and I want you to pay attention to your own role in storytelling of how you're interpreting it to yourself, because it's a story about me telling a story to myself. But I think that it's really useful in so many ways, not just because we're reconvening and meeting in the sanctuary again, and everybody's going to have to make a decision on what works for them in that invitation, but that it is so fitting for everything else going on at the same time. We're getting very close to an election, a lot of political debates, and I want you to always have in your back pocket the hamburger story so that you can get quickly to spiritual truth. Do I have you interested? All right, so here's the deal. A couple weeks ago, I went to the grocery store, and I did it in I probably won't do this again, but I tried to squeeze in, thinking it would be efficient to get the shopping done early in the day before I go to work. I tried to squeeze grocery shopping in the morning. So I went to the store and everything went well, and I brought home all my groceries, and I unloaded the car and put all my groceries away, and then I scurried off to work here at church. And I didn't think another thing of it. Went home at the end of the day, cooked dinner for my beloved, and it wasn't until I had one of those startling things that wakes you up in the middle of the night. It was a thought, it wasn't a bad dream or anything, but it was like I woke up around 2 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly I'm sitting in the dark in bed while my husband is snoring right next to me, minding his own business. So, get it. You're alone with your own thoughts in those circumstances. And I couldn't remember handling the hamburger after I got home from the grocery store. So I knew I had it. I remembered putting it in the cart. I was going to make tacos. I had a big plan around it. Going to get home, cook up that meat, season it with all the stuff I like for tacos, and then I was going to freeze it in an individual. But no hamburger. Could not remember it. I could remember putting it up on that little conveyor belt counter, for the checkout. So I knew I had it at least that far. And then, again, 2 o'clock in the morning in the dark, he's snoring. I'm pondering, thinking, starting to worry. Worse than that, I became very self-accusatory, believing I must have left a grocery bag in the trunk of my car. And that's where the hamburger was. Now I'm thinking, oh, and I've gone to work, and it was hot. We live in the desert. It was hot all day. That hamburger must still be in the trunk of my car, and now it's probably smelling bad, and it's going to make my car smell bad, and I could not go back to sleep. So here's what you do. In a situation like that where you notice you're caught up in thinking that's not productive, I had not even observed yet that I was scolding myself for being, well, I won't say the word, but I was thinking, oh, shame on you for forgetting that. What a big expense to lose, blah, blah, blah. The whole thing you do when you're alone in your head in the middle of the night. So I decided to get up out of bed and at least go, save my car and get the bag of groceries. But when I went to, so there I am. Now it's 3 in the morning. There I am in the garage in the middle of the night, getting something out of my trunk, trying not to alarm the neighbors. And at any rate, there was nothing in the trunk of my car that didn't belong there. And there was no hamburger. So now I come back in the house and I decide I must have put that hamburger somewhere because I was in a hurry. I must have put that hamburger somewhere it didn't belong. And so for another hour, I searched the pantry and I searched the COVID overflow pantry where I have excessively stored a few things I probably didn't need to buy. But now I have a nice fat pantry, and anyhow, there was no hamburger anywhere. I even looked in the refrigerator in case I absentmindedly, kind of like your glasses and you don't know where they're. No hamburger anywhere. So then I thought, I'll check my receipt, and sure enough, I paid for the hamburger, but I did not. I'm convinced now I did not bring the hamburger home, and that was correct. It never turned up. So the next day, to resolve this situation, I decided the smart thing to do was to get myself prayed up and to go to the grocery store. It was just a mistake. It probably ended up in the lady's groceries bag behind me or in front. I don't know when. And I prayed myself up so I wouldn't go to the grocery store with a bad attitude, like somebody had done something wrong. Maybe I could pull this off without blaming anybody, including myself. And when I come in, I ask one of the clerks, what do I do? And they say, they direct me to the other side of the store where there is customer service. The customer service counter is going to take care of this. Don't worry, we're going to make it all better for you. So I walk around the corner and it is a long line. There's, it looks longer because we're all spaced out when the little markings on the floor, the COVID 6 feet apart. But there had to be 3 or 4 or more people in front of me, one clerk, and whatever was going on with the guy she was waiting on, it just took forever for him to get his stuff done. So I noticed I was tempted to be a little annoyed about having to wait in a long, slow line, and I made a conscious decision, don't be annoyed. So I pulled my cell phone out, and I'm doing a little what work I can, answering texts and stuff. And the line doesn't move, and the line doesn't move. And now I can hear there's a line of people behind me. They finally bring in a second person to assist us. We've moved forward a little bit, but suddenly I can feel that someone is behind me, and they are not 6 feet away from me. And so I kind of fidget around a little bit, and I look down, and I can see that it's a man's feet. I swear to you, hindsightedly, it was like I could feel the devil horns coming right out of my head and showing in public. So I got my mask on, he's got his mask on, and before I can think it through, like I had been thinking things through and making conscious decisions all morning, before I could think it through, I reacted, and I did, what I did. I did that horrible turn around, give him the stink eye, and then turn right back around again. Now, as soon as I looked at him and I realized I was giving him those little beady, ugly, angry eyes, I felt really bad. Like, oh, what have I done? And then if you're a minister, you start thinking like, what if it was a congregant, and you have all this little humor going on in your head, except that I realized in that moment that I'm accountable for all of that. So the coolest thing happened. I'm so amazed that I had the insight to do this, or the foresight. I began to ask myself, okay, what are you going to do? And that question, because he was clearly like 2 feet behind me, how do you want to handle this in a way that's more halo than horns? And as I thought it through, I asked myself this powerful question that I couldn't even believe I thought of. Miss Karen, are you afraid you are going to get COVID from that person behind you? And I really tried that on. Is that what's going on for me? Remember, this is not about you. I'm telling you my story and how I processed it. So I'm thinking about it. Is that a concern for me? And in the immediacy of that moment, me wearing my mask, everybody was wearing masks. I had plenty of room in front of me. He's not touching me. He's still a good couple feet away from me. And I realized right now, in my feeling of my need to feel safe right now, I feel safe. He is not violating me personally by his choice. And then the next question was, okay then, Miss Karen, what's going on for you? What triggered you that you reacted instead of responded? Because here's the thing. Had I done that check in my mind, are you concerned about COVID? And if my response had been yes, I am, then it would have been my responsibility to communicate that, and that I could do that I don't even have to be ministerial about it. Just in a kind human way, I could speak to him and say, I'm sorry, when the line advances, I need you to stay back there because I'm feeling like I need more space. Or I could, if I didn't feel safe and I didn't have, if I felt like it was too risky for conflict, I could leave. I could absolutely leave and even walk through the store and come back when the line was shorter. There are a lot of options that we are all facing all the time. And what I know is I don't want to react. So when I said, what's really going on, then it was kind of humorous because I realized, that's an old habit of mine. When I'm following the rules and you don't follow the rules in the same way I'm following the rules, I'm going to have an attitude that you should be doing better than you're doing. And so there's judgment in that, and I realized, man, I do that all the time on the highway when I'm driving down the road. Even if I'm sitting here at church and I hear somebody, go too fast down the road, I have an opinion about it. So that's me. That is not anybody else's. And I think because we are living in sort of devilish times, we're a little more impatient than we might be otherwise. And so I just had a good chuckle. Eventually it was my turn and I got my hamburger and it was really easy. But the real gift of the day was that I had that experience of examining what was going on within me and noticing that I still had this whole rainbow of choices of how I wanted to move through my life. And more than that, I realized that in my sudden reaction to him being in my space and the way that I am capable of giving that, I'm sorry if you've ever seen me do that, it's not so pretty, but in my ability to do that, I recognized how instantly I cut off the flow of love in my own life. Not only did I turn and give the stink eye to another human being who was apparently comfortable in his space, but in my relationship to it and to his choices, I had a judgment, and that judgment severed the flow of love in my life. Now, we know that isn't true. You can't sever love, right? I know, I want to sing Diana Ross right now too. You can't stop the flow of love. But what we do in those moments is we sort of cloud over, and then clog up that flow. But we're covering our own awareness to the fact that right where we are, love is. And so in my response to him, in the way I reacted to him, rather than responding, I created a lack of love, and there was suffering that I then encountered in my own life. I'm just talking about being accountable for him. I'm not even talking, for me, I'm talking about, it's not about him. And it's certainly not about me being the police and telling everybody how they need to lead their lives. But it was about me being accountable to myself and the flow of love in my own life. So here's what I thought, what I've been thinking. The conditions that we are experiencing in the world and have been for many months now have created distance and isolation. But our hearts are still hungry for connection. And so let us pay attention to the way we encounter each other in the world, especially when we see by someone's choice in their actions, and we notice that we ourselves are having a judgment, that's where we can return to love. Because everything we see is either a call for love for ourselves or someone else. If you think you witness misbehavior, it's a call for love on the part of somebody else who doesn't even realize they're acting out, in the same way he might have been offended by the way I looked at him. So we are connected in here. There's something really important for us to all realize, and that every action we take, and this is now pure spiritual science, the understanding of how spiritual laws work, that every action we take is absolutely equivalent in the energy we've put into that action in the way that it moves out into the world. And so, do we want to miss out on love, or do we want to encourage more love? And can we be just willing to pay attention to our own behaviors and patterns and all of that? Holmes had a fabulous quote that fits so sweetly right here. When our thoughts are contrary to divine goodness, they create discomfort within ourselves. When our thoughts are contrary to divine goodness in any way, there's a reciprocal response that creates discomfort in our own being. So what this tells me is that, Holmes understood this whole horns and halo. Seems like it's a dichotomy, and yet it's just a way that we move through the world in the decisions we're always making. So if I take you back to that opening quote where he said we needed to develop bigger and better equivalents for our future, that's what I'm saying, that yes, we need to develop bigger and better equivalents for our future, but our future includes right now, right in this moment. Do you see? I grew horns and had an attitude, and immediately I experienced a discomfort from my own mood or attitude or space in consciousness. I wasn't consciously deciding how I wanted to respond, and instead I reacted. So these sticky times we're living in, I think what I'm really inviting you to see here, especially because we've only got a couple of weeks left before the big, the election's over and we can breathe. Actually, I would recommend you breathe now. But let's be accountable. We have lots of opportunities to be accountable for our own predicaments, whatever they be, whether we cause them ourselves, like waking up in the middle of the night, or we put our stuff on other people, or people put stuff on us. It doesn't matter. Be accountable for yourself. I think that's so useful for us to think about right now. No shame, no blame, and don't shame and blame yourself as you're learning to use these processes as well. Another thing I realized while I was thinking about all of it and looking for ways to make a good personal lesson out of it for myself is that you don't have to have horns to set boundaries, right? You don't have to be angry or mean in order to draw lines in the sand. There are constructive ways that we can communicate with each other as we're learning to find our voice and take a stand for the things that are important to us personally and individually. There's this gorgeous lesson in our teaching and in New Thought, generally speaking, perhaps in all spiritual traditions, that we are really creating our own environment, right? We are co-creators in terms of the circumstances that we move through. So when we begin to recognize that, we might also begin to see that as we blame other people for things that aren't going well in our own situation, when I make you wrong, I have imprisoned myself. Now I'm stuck in a belief that could have just passed. I could have even easily reversed it had I caught it earlier, but now I have imprisoned myself because I have forgotten that even if I can't create a vision in my mind of being out of prison, if I can't do that, I can at least remember I have the key to free myself. I love that idea. There's always a key that unlocks that door, but it's good news, bad news, because you are the only one that holds that key for yourself. You possess the key to your own freedom. The other piece that feels sort of important right now is that I think that there is a way, once I recognize I'm having a strong opinion or a judgment. I know we don't like that word judgment, but I want you to see how it helped me to see I was having a judgment. When we're in that space, angry, even just afraid, whether it's for our health or our relationship situation or finances, it doesn't matter. When I'm attached to worrying about all of those things, I will not have peace until I surrender whatever that is that I'm hanging on to, whatever thread of that belief that's feeding the worry that's going on in my own mind. So surrender is a big piece of that. Surrender by letting go of, consciously making a decision to let go of the negativity. Holmes spoke of this. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Love alone makes the complete surrender because love alone sees itself in the other and the other in itself." Feel that reciprocity in that, the give and the take and the giving and the receiving in the beautiful way. So we have to surrender one to the other, and that's why we say that we are never healed alone. And that's why I really, it hit home for me that angry eyes kill love. It's just that simple. That in that moment there was no love, and therefore I've killed that flow and movement of my own awareness of love in the presence of that. So any separation is a call for love, and that's where we want to go by. Any way that we're stirred and reactive is a time to stop and pause and take a breath and come back to truth, so that we can recognize we are impeding the flow of love simply by the way we hold our breath in our resentments and angers and all of that. So that made me think a lot about the great teacher Jesus, and the way that Jesus, as well as anyone, and perhaps better, he had studied to be a rabbi, and he understood Judaic law. And yet when he began his ministry, not that he didn't turn his back on that, but he said that he brought us two great commands, and both of those were love. There's something very powerful in pausing to remember that. And so what I get is that there was some way that this masterful teacher, this man Jesus of Nazareth, who lived this incredible life as an example for us to follow, he understood that there was a change going on in the way spirituality was evolving at that time. And he was introducing us to a liberation theology. I like thinking of it as a theology that provides personal freedom as we continue to deepen in our spiritual understanding and awareness of the way life works all around us, that there's greater freedom in it. And one of the things he brought us was this method of prayer that was very different. He had some sort of instinct to understand there was a way that he didn't pray to the Father to change things. He had this wisdom to see there was a corresponding way of thinking higher thoughts that would then create a reality that made this great connection. It's so wonderful if you read deeply the New Testament, that he understood this connection of mind and spirit. He understood mental healing in a whole different way than had probably ever been thought about. In fact, we didn't have words for it until the last few hundred years, where we've really had people dive deep into metaphysics and mental healing. And now we have this marriage of science and spirit as we look at quantum physics and quantum mechanics. So Jesus was really giving us information that can help us understand what he was witnessing as he looked at life and he observed things, that he understood cause and effect, that he understood, he was talking to us about the law of circulation. And when we study mental healing then, and we have that great glorious example that he gave us, we realize that it begins with a thought. That everything, look around you, everything you can see was once just a thought. And from that thought, something stirs within us, ideas and images and possibilities, even our desires, then spark something. It begins the movement, the action of these universal spiritual laws, but it all begins with an idea, a single thought. And I think that that's what Jesus was telling us when he understood the power of his word. He understood in this way, he gives us the model prayer, that there's a way that we're not begging and asking the Father to fix things or change things, but that we can use our own word, right? The power of our own word. And that's what he meant when he said that these things will pass, the heavens and the earth, these things will pass, but my word shall not. Right? That my word will be fulfilled. And there was a certainty about the way that statement is recorded and spoken. And so we see here this fabulous thread of understanding of the mind and of consciousness and the wisdom behind speaking powerful words with conviction, with faith, with conviction, and we speak those words then into physical reality or experience, to actual experience. So we don't deny the physical world, but I think what all the great thinkers noticed was that there are patterns available that we can observe and that we can seek out that wisdom and extract it and use it in our own lives. Now, if I look back at the way that it's recorded that Jesus did his ministry, the way he lived his life as an example in the segments of his ministry, and we were looking at prayer specifically, what I see is that, he rarely did this man speak about negative conditions. So he never had conversations with God about the problems of illness and poverty on the planet. He didn't pray to God to ask God to cure hunger or loneliness or depression. He never asked God to change circumstances, but rather he affirmed the opposite of the circumstances or the appearances, and he spoke great, powerful truths into the consciousness of humanity. And so he knew that something more was possible. He knew that something more was possible. What did he do? Well, he told the lame to throw down their crutch or to stand up and to walk. He told the blind to open their eyes and to see. He told the deaf to hear. And he commanded the waves to be still. And what we know is that he stayed the calm in the midst of the storm. Now, there is something very precise in our reciprocal action, the way that we have a relationship with a mental equivalence of the way life works. In the instant I felt devil horns growing, and I did something sort of naughty from, you could say. In the instant, that was a reciprocal energy that then came back, and I felt the discomfort of it. not even talking about the repercussions, the way our actions ripple out. I mean, we have enough to feel guilty over. What I'm saying is that we can manage ourselves a little bit better than we have been. And I'm really grateful to have that understanding, because there's something absolutely dynamic in the exact way we send out that energy, it returns and comes back to us. And so let us stay calm in the midst of the storms and the turmoil. Let us remember that there's horns and there's halos, and that we're always in choice. Let us forgive ourselves when we've been a little devilish, and let us not shame and blame, certainly outside of us, but be aware of how we do that to ourselves in the middle of the night when you think you left a bag in the trunk of the car. Right? It doesn't matter. Nothing's that important. We have every tool that we already need to calm ourselves down in every storm. And I, for one, do not desire for my devilish encounters to stop the flow of love on this planet. In fact, I would like to do the opposite. And so I will leave you with this fabulous quote from, again, Ernest Holmes, from the book Words That Heal Today. And Holmes said this: according to the law of cause and effect, fear brings to us the condition that faith could dissipate. According to the laws of cause and effect, it's just the way life works. There is a first cause, a seed that is planted that comes to fruition. And when we plant seeds while we are in fear, then that fear, it lessens our faith, right? So there's a reciprocal relationship going on all the time here. He goes on to say this: this is not because we're dealing with duality. It would be easy to blame it on that. But this is because we're dealing with a unity that is so complete, that is so perfect, that is so exact, that individual freedom must bear the responsibility of choice until experience teaches us how to choose wisely and well. I hope that you will hear in my story about hamburger, or where's the beef, I guess we could call it. I hope that you will hear in my story the ways in which we can choose wisely and well for ourselves, and therefore keep that flow of love on this planet being what it needs to be. Let us all be conscious of being conduits of God's precious love. Oh, and so let's just take a moment to allow the words and really just to deal with your own reactions around the stories and all the implications of it, and just seed through that like it's a harvest, and you're looking for that little gem of truth that is yours. And when you find it, just hold it in your hand. And let us take a moment to recognize that, yes, the words of prayer are so powerful. And as I hold my hand on my heart, I recognize the softness and the beauty of being open, and to be willing, and to know that as we sense and feel that love within us, it is a recognition of the presence of God, the indwelling presence of Spirit itself. And so join me in just feeling and sensing the love of God within you. Breathe that in. And know with me that that love is the activity of life. And there is a tremendous call on this planet right now for the movement and the multiplying effect, the expanding nature of love to be enhanced right now. And so as we align ourselves to this mighty truth, that there is this gorgeous reciprocal relationship each and every one of us has with all the elements of life itself in this gorgeous spiritual universe, that even as we watch ourselves react, that we can choose again, that we can be restored to love, that we can rise and transcend the conditions of our life by affirming the opposite of the things that are troublesome to us. We can allow that sense of love to rejuvenate our minds and our hearts and our confidence, so that we can stand again in the solidness of faith, of love, that we can develop that conviction of the power of our words and the power of our thoughts, and that we can be awake and conscious and aware and contribute to this great flow of beauty and wonder and order, and all of the ways in which this planet and the consciousness of humanity is being cleansed and rebirthed. And so we can stand, and even when it feels uneasy or hellish, we can stand in truth. We can realign ourselves to that which is greater than any of the circumstances or the appearances that we see. And we can be born again within, in that indwelling presence. We can be resurrected to a higher way of seeing and a higher way of moving through our lives. We can therefore bless this planet with our presence as well. And in the meantime, we can know we are loved and we are held sweetly in the hands of God. We are guided and directed and carried through this thing called life. I am grateful to know this. I am grateful to understand again this day that this is how life works. I say thank you, God. Thank you, Infinite Spirit. And I release these words. I surrender and release these words into the law, knowing that it is returned to us, multiplied, pressed down, and flowing over, just in the way that God would have it be. And together we say, and so it is. Well, I have my offering today, and I'm going to pass it to my best helper of the day. All right, second best. Julie's the best. Oh, and I'm going to invite you to just pay attention to all of the information that's now going to be popping up into the newsletter as well as the website, so that you can be timely if you want to rejoin us. And that if you want to stay home, you will absolutely know that because you heard this message today, that you are blessed on your journey, because Julie spent a lot of hours here figuring this out. We are going to continue broadcasting just like this. You're going to get a quality service in your living room. You could even be in your jammies if you want. So you're at choice. And I'm asking you to please be accountable for your highest and best good, because nobody knows that better than you do. I love you. I honor you. Namaste. See you soon.